The title of Duke of Rothesay and the other Scottish titles which I've had the honour to carry for so long, I now pass to Catherine.
All right, picture this. The whole room goes dead silent before King Charles even opens his mouth, right under his hand. He's got this sealed document, and it's about to blow up years of royal tradition. He's looking frail. He's got the whole family there under super top secret conditions. And then he drops the bomb. Catherine gets full control over his personal royal stuff, while Camilla gets completely stripped of her power. Honestly, it wasn't just sad. It was a total political earthquake disguised as a family goodbye. Charles calls William, Catherine, Camilla, Princess Anne, and 2 lawyers into this room at Windsor Castle. No aides, no staff, just family. He signs this paper that basically hands Catherine all his private estates, trusts, archives, you name it. Meanwhile, Camilla gets totally frozen out of any post-death decision-making. William was just standing there gripping a chair. He thought this meeting was gonna shore up his future reign, but instead, Charles hands the keys to his legacy to Catherine. He looks at his wife, totally in shock. And Catherine? She wasn't celebrating at all. She looked terrified. Knowing this put a massive target on her back. Camilla sat there completely still while the lawyer read the part taking away her power. She asks, "So years of loyalty come down to one signature?" Charles doesn't say a word. Total ice. But then it gets darker. Turns out she was cut out because of some major breach of trust back at Balmoral. Catherine looks at Princess Anne, and Anne just knows. Catherine actually tried to refuse it right there. She's like, "I never asked for this. And I'm not taking it at Camilla's expense." But Charles puts down the pen and goes, "This isn't a reward. It's protection. I'm keeping private drama from ruining the next reign." He signs it with a shaky hand. Camilla tries to grab the papers, but Princess Anne snaps the folder shut right in her face. Before Catherine even leaves, she gets a second envelope from 6 months ago, the exact night at Balmoral, when Charles realized he couldn't trust Camilla anymore. But before Catherine can even process it, she's got to face the 3 people whose lives just got turned upside down. It looked like a win-lose situation on paper, but everybody walked out of Windsor miserable. Catherine inherited power she was scared of, Camilla lost everything she thought was locked down, and William had to watch his dad bypass him for his wife. No winners here, just a huge royal mess no title can hide. Catherine spent years playing the quiet, reliable card, and that's why Charles trusted her. But the system always expected her to stand behind William, not run things herself. And the worst part? Now everyone's gonna act like she pulled the strings to sink Camilla all along. So Camilla had this whole future mapped out. She thought marrying Charles meant she was locked in, respect, the house, her staff, and a real seat at the table even after he passed. She figured she'd be this respected royal widow that William and Catherine would still come to for advice. But nope, that signed paper wiped all of that out in one single night. She's protected personally, sure, but institutionally, completely wiped off the board. Catherine opens the folder alone with William later, and her hands are literally shaking. She closes it right away and tells him straight up, "Charles just put a giant target on my back." She was terrified people would see her as this calculating schemer, especially while Camilla was sitting there humiliated and grieving. William was proud of Catherine, but man, he was hurting too. He actually looks at her and goes, "Did my dad trust you more than his own son?" Catherine tells him, "Look, maybe he did it to protect you from having to go toe-to-toe with your stepmother." William goes and confronts Princess Anne about what happened at Balmoral, but Anne gives him zero comfort. Turns out Anne helped Charles draft the whole thing, and her silence said it all. When William keeps pressing her, Anne just drops it. Camilla had one last chance to prove where her loyalty was, and she blew it. Meanwhile, Camilla locks herself in her room, pulls out this handwritten list from a drawer. It's all these senior officials and managers she thought she could count on after Charles died. Half the names were already crossed out in Charles's own handwriting. Catherine comes up to the door later, but stops dead in her tracks when she hears Camilla sobbing. And then she hears Camilla say something she'll never forget. "I'm never taking pity from the woman who just got handed my life." Finally, William opens that second envelope from Balmoral. Inside, Charles wrote just one line. This started the night she tried to change Catherine's place in the succession without my consent. See, everyone thought the signed paper was the big event. But the real damage happened months ago during this private Balmoral deal, what Charles called the point of no return. 6 months back, the family gathered at Balmoral for what looked like a low-key continuity ceremony. No cameras, no press, just family. But in the library behind closed doors, Camilla made a move that ruined her marriage forever. It wasn't just a silly remark. It was a calculated play to rewrite Catherine's future. And Charles heard every word. Charles had set up this symbolic passing of the torch to William and Catherine just to show that if his health went downhill, the next generation had things covered. He wanted reassurance, not a fight. But Camilla? She panicked. She saw Catherine becoming the go-to person for advisors, and saw herself getting totally sidelined once Charles was gone. So she waited until everyone walked away, cornered Charles, and demanded a permanent veto over Catherine's power. And that was the beginning of the end. That was it. The point of no return. Charles literally looks at her and asks, "Do you want protection? Or do you want control?" And Camilla actually says, "Catherine needs to learn there's still a queen before she becomes one." Charles's face just goes totally stone cold. In that exact second, he realized his wife didn't see Catherine as family anymore. She saw her as a threat, a rival that needed to be put in her place. And guess what? Catherine was right outside in the hallway, picking up a folder, and she heard her name. She stood there hidden, listening to Camilla trash her judgment, her background, and whether she even had the right to touch royal property. Catherine didn't say a word. She walked away completely crushed. But she didn't want to start a fight while Charles was so sick. Her silence was meant to protect him. But it just buried the whole mess deeper. A few hours later, Princess Anne uncovers the next huge betrayal. She finds these handwritten changes on the draft agreement that matched Camilla's demands, stuff that would have forced Catherine to ask for permission just to use royal houses, archives, jewelry, or staff. And to make it worse, a senior official admitted in writing that Camilla's team had already sent out notes acting like these changes were approved, even though Charles never signed off on them. Charles takes that altered draft and walks straight over to the fireplace with Anne right beside him. As he watches the paper burn, he tells his sister, "Camilla mistook my love for permission." That very night, he asked Anne to help him draft a final directive to make sure Catherine could never be put under Camilla's thumb again. Fast forward a few months, the decree is signed, and that secret Balmoral fight can't stay hidden anymore. So Camilla decides to confront Catherine face to face. Camilla doesn't bring in lawyers, advisors, or her supporters. She just calls Catherine in. Hours after Charles signs the paper, the two of them step into a private room and shut the door tight. For years, all their bad blood was masked by fake smiles, polite waves, and royal protocol. But now, no cameras, no audience, and no king left to keep the peace. One woman feels like her whole life was just stolen, and the other feels like she was forced to clean up the mess. Catherine actually agreed to meet because she didn't want this drama poisoning the staff, advisors, or the rest of the family. She wanted to explain that this wasn't her doing, and that Camilla's dignity didn't have to be completely destroyed. The decree had shifted the power. Yeah, but it didn't mean they had to be cruel, because at the end of the day, any subtle insult inside those walls could turn into a full-blown public disaster for a grieving family. So check this out. Camilla didn't even ask her to give back the whole inheritance. She just throws this private deal on the table and demands total control over Clarence's house. Specific pieces of jewelry, ceremonial guest lists, and every single record from her time with Charles. She was basically like, "Look, these aren't perks. This is proof that my whole life with the king actually mattered." Catherine just sat there taking hit after hit. Camilla goes off on her, saying she's been waiting around for years while the public treated Catherine like the real future of the monarchy. She accused Catherine of playing the innocent, humble wife while secretly letting Charles and William build a brand new court around her. Honestly, those words hit deep. But Catherine refused to play into it. She wasn't going to give Camilla the enemy she was looking for. She told her straight up, "I gave up my privacy, my health, and my peace to serve the crown, not to bring you down." Her voice even cracked a bit when she said Charles's last few months shouldn't end up looking like a massive brawl between the two people closest to him. Camilla looked away, but she didn't soften up one bit. Then Camilla pulls out her big gun, copies of private letters. These papers made it look like Catherine's team was already plotting to cut Camilla out before that whole Balmoral drama even happened. She warned Catherine, "If these leak, you're gonna look like the mastermind behind a planned purge." But Catherine reads through them super carefully and notices pages are literally missing. Anything showing Charles gave those orders himself was stripped out. Camilla wasn't just defending herself, she was setting a trap to totally ruin Catherine's reputation. Catherine read every single line, put the pen down without signing a thing, and slid the paper right back to her. She promised Camilla respect, protection, and dignity, but she wasn't restoring powers that Charles explicitly stripped away. Camilla stood up so fast her chair screeched across the floor. She looks at Catherine and goes, "You just chose war." Right then, the door pops open. Turns out Charles was in the next room and heard the whole thing. He walks in, looks at the papers on the table, and asks to see the exact letters Camilla tried to use against Catherine. Now that fight showed just how furious Camilla was. But what Charles did next proved who was actually calling the shots. His directive wasn't some impulsive move from a dying man. He spent months setting this up in total secrecy with lawyers and family, building an ironclad fortress around this decision. Camilla thought she could still guilt-trip him or negotiate her way out of it. Big mistake. By the time she confronted Catherine, Charles had already handed over the keys, the ink, and the loyalty that actually makes royal power real. He drew a super sharp line between his personal stuff and the actual throne. William was still 100% the undisputed heir to the crown, but Catherine got full stewardship of the private estates, archives, trusts, and family treasures. And that was brilliant. It kept the next reign from looking like a revenge plot, while keeping the most sensitive royal assets in hands he actually trusted. So, Princess Anne was the mastermind behind all the legal armor. She warned Charles straight up, "If you use vague words, Camilla's team is gonna twist this around the second you're gone." She made sure the paper named everything, specific houses, bank accounts, art collections, hiring powers, every single record. And Charles was like, "You're right," knowing vague promises get delayed or thrown in the trash. Charles reads through those fake edited letters in complete silence. Then he looks at Catherine and basically admits, "I protected Camilla for so long that she mistook my protection for permanent power." He wasn't even yelling, he just sounded completely exhausted. He realized his own silence is what allowed her fear to turn into this giant power struggle. And that he helped create this mess in the first place. But check out what Catherine does. She actually turns down unchecked power. She tells Charles, "Look, absolute control will destroy me the same way insecurity destroyed Camilla." She asks to have William and Anne co-sign major decisions, showing everyone she wanted responsibility, not a dictatorship. Charles looked so relieved. He told her, "Honestly, Catherine, the fact that you don't want total control is the exact reason I trust you." Then the lawyers dropped the final hammer. The private trusts, the big money legal setups that control royal properties and assets were already restructured in secret. Game over. If Camilla tried to sue or challenge the transfer, she'd have to explain those unauthorized Balmoral moves and those shady edited letters she tried to use against Catherine. Total checkmate. Charles finally explains why he kept William out of the loop the whole time. He didn't want anyone pointing fingers at his son, saying he used the future crown to get revenge on his stepmother. Catherine was chosen as the clean, independent caretaker, and Anne was there as the enforcer. Then Charles reaches inside his jacket, takes a small key off a chain, and presses it right into Catherine's hand. It opened the private archive with his final personal letters and confidential orders. She squeezes her hand around it and just bursts into tears. Charles tells her, "Preserve this family, Catherine, but don't preserve our mistakes." Right after that, Anne gets the official text. Camilla's staff clearance, money access, and authority were getting cut off at midnight sharp. And when midnight hit, no screaming matches, no public drama. The whole monarchy changed in dead silence. Security keycards just stopped working. Private orders got pulled back. Staffers got sealed envelopes telling them that all authority from Camilla's office now belonged to Catherine. No trumpets, no big speeches, just locked doors and updated names on the official list. Done. For Camilla, the absolute worst part wasn't just being told her power was gone. It was reaching out for stuff she took for granted and realizing it just didn't work for her anymore. Household managers had already gotten strict orders. Private houses, archives, trust accounts, historic collections, and key hires were all handed directly to Catherine. This administrative handoff, the actual shift of power from one office to another, had Charles's signature and Anne's stamp of approval, meaning no courtier could brush it off. And nobody could pretend they were confused. The new rules were live, effective immediately, and 100% locked down. Now Camilla wasn't thrown out on the street. Her personal money, security, stuff, and a designated royal house were still totally protected. Charles drew a super sharp line between taking care of her as his wife and handing her institutional control. He wasn't kicking her to the curb, but he was not letting her role beside him dictate the future of the crown after he was gone. Camilla got that cold reality check the very next morning. She walks up to the private records room she'd been using for years and swipes her keycard. Red light. She tries again. Red light. A security guard she's known forever lowers his eyes and goes, "Sorry, ma'am, only Catherine. William, Anne, and approved staff can enter now." She didn't say a word, but that rejection stung all the way down the hall. Minutes later, Catherine gets the first file needing her approval. But get this, she couldn't even bring herself to sit at Charles's desk. She signed it standing up. Knowing every time she used her new power, it was a direct reminder of what Camilla just lost. A moment most people would celebrate felt like a funeral to her. And then, the inventory check dropped a bomb. One of the red dispatch boxes filled with Balmoral papers was missing. If you don't know, a dispatch box is that super secure briefcase used for confidential royal files. Logs showed it was handed to Camilla's secretary right before the decree was signed. Shortly after, Anne gets a taped call from one of Camilla's veteran aides offering to give the box back. The aide confessed that Camilla's team pulled a few files because she was terrified Catherine was going to leak years of her behind-the-scenes maneuvering. That morning, Camilla walks into her office expecting a full staff briefing, only to find one secretary sitting there. Every other desk was completely wiped clean. She puts her hand on an empty chair and asks, "Did Catherine do this?" The secretary looks at her and says, "No. Charles signed every single reassignment himself." At this point, Catherine had the power to fire the rest of the staff on the spot, but instead of flexing her power, she asked for one last private meeting with Camilla. With every guard, lawyer, and courtier out of the way, the two of them were about to face each other one last time. Not as power-hungry rivals, but as two women dealing with the wreckage Charles left behind. Their second meeting was completely different. None of the shouting or fury from round one. Catherine shows up without that royal folder, and Camilla shows up without her list of demands. No advisors outside, no lawyers furiously taking notes, no staff running back and forth. For the first time since Charles dropped that hammer, the two of them just talked. No using the monarchy as a weapon or a shield. The room was still tense, sure, but the hostility was gone. It was just two women facing the exact same heartbreak. Catherine starts off. She makes it super clear. She's not there to roll back Charles's orders or give back the power he stripped away. She came to answer one question. Was Camilla's future in the family gonna be total humiliation or protected dignity? The legal directive wasn't changing. But that didn't mean they had to treat her without basic human kindness. Camilla knew the game was up. The cleared-out offices, the deactivated keycards, the reassigned staff, it hit her loud and clear that no amount of guilt-tripping was gonna undo this. She wasn't even scared of losing power anymore because, well, it was already gone. What terrified her now was going down in history as the wife Charles stopped trusting. During their chat, Camilla finally admits the truth. Balmoral came out of pure, unadulterated terror. She was convinced that as Catherine's star rose, she'd be completely erased the second Charles died. She tried to keep Catherine under her thumb because the thought of becoming invisible again was terrifying. No excuses. No spin. Just a woman admitting she mistook her own fear for self-preservation. Catherine didn't pretend it was all fine either. She admitted Camilla's actions cut deep. It didn't just mess with her authority, it made years of playing nice feel like a joke. She said hearing that conversation at Balmoral made her question if there was ever real peace in the family or if every fake smile was just hiding a secret war. Then Camilla slides the missing red dispatch box across the table. Inside were the full, unedited Balmoral letters proving Charles was the one who called for her power to be stripped in the first place. Leaking these would totally clear Catherine's name, but it would completely trash Camilla's public legacy. What does Catherine do? She closes the box and seals it shut. She promises those files will stay locked up forever, as long as Camilla doesn't challenge the decree or trash the king. No revenge, no flexing. Power wasn't going to be used as a weapon. Camilla takes off a ring Charles gave her during one of the rockiest times in their marriage. Holding it in her hand, she admits she hoped his love would guarantee her a permanent spot in the institution forever. Catherine gently folds Camilla's fingers back over the ring and goes, "Love can stay, even when power can't." Camilla agrees to sign off on the truce and accept Catherine's protection plan. It was a fragile peace, but it was real. That private deal shut down the inner family war, but outside the castle walls, all hell was about to break loose by sunrise. The secret was completely out. TV networks interrupted live broadcasts, huge crowds swarmed the palace gates, and newspapers scrapped their front pages for one crazy photo. Catherine walking out of the castle holding Charles's sealed archive key. The whole country wasn't just reacting to a change in the will, they were watching the old hierarchy crumble live on TV. To some, Catherine was the ultimate savior. To others, Camilla getting cut out looked ice cold. But one single moment outside Buckingham Palace captured the mood better than any talking head ever could. So Buckingham Palace drops this super carefully worded press release, confirming Charles officially made Catherine the sole custodian of his personal royal legacy. Basically, she's the one handed the keys to all the private estates, archives, trusts, and family secrets. And the palace didn't mince words about Camilla either. They confirmed she won't hold any administrative, financial, or advisory power after Charles passes. Boom. Every shadow of doubt completely cleared out. The handoff was 100% complete, and there was zero room left for some shady shadow court to operate behind the scenes. William steps right up to the mics and frames Catherine's new job as pure service, not some big promotion. Smart move, because one wrong word would have made his wife look like she was rubbing salt in a grieving woman's wounds. Princess Anne was standing right next to him, giving the whole thing massive credibility. She put out a recorded statement basically saying, "Look, Charles did this for continuity, not to punish anyone." Camilla watched the TV news all by herself. The second the news anchor started talking about her former powers in the past tense, she just muted the volume. But a few minutes later, she walks right out next to Charles for a scheduled appearance, holding her head high. She wasn't about to let the public see the heartbreak that already broke her behind closed doors. Over on the commentary side, pundits were calling Catherine the monarchy's brand new center of gravity. But Catherine wasn't feeling like a winner at all. She admits to William in private that every time the crowd cheered for her, it felt like they were celebrating Charles getting sicker and Camilla losing everything. William gives her a total reality check. Sometimes duty shows up looking like praise, even when it feels like hell. The next morning, the Daily Chronicle nailed the whole mood with this crazy front page. You've got Catherine holding that archive key with the giant headline, "The King's Last Trust." Right next to it is this smaller photo of Camilla driving away from Windsor all alone. Just like that. A private family feud turned into a national verdict. Outside Buckingham Palace, this elderly woman walks up and lays 2 bouquets of flowers against the gate, white roses with a note saying, "For Catherine," red roses saying, "For Camilla." A TV reporter called it perfectly. One woman just inherited a massive burden, while the other just lost the future she planned for. Right after that, Camilla releases a short written statement supporting Charles's call and pledging her loyalty to William and Catherine. Zero bitterness in the text, which proved that private deal they made actually held up. As the whole world was going wild debating this, Charles calls the family together for one last balcony appearance. He wanted to show everyone, with a single picture, how his final wish was going to be remembered. The media and the public had already passed their judgment, but Charles still had one final move left, a move that would turn all this drama into an unforgettable royal farewell. So Charles's last public moment didn't even need a speech. Standing right between the two women whose lives were turned totally upside down by his call, the king reaches out, first holding Camilla's hand, then Catherine's in that one single gesture. He separated love from power without throwing either one away. Camilla was still his wife. Catherine became the keeper of his legacy. William stood right there beside them, and it finally clicked for him. His dad wasn't playing favorites or ranking one woman's worth over the other. He was just securing the crown for when he wasn't around anymore. He lined them all up, Camilla, William, Catherine, and Anne, for one last public photo op, and the setup was 100% intentional. His wife stood at his side as the woman he loved, while Catherine stood beside the future king as the person trusted with the next chapter. The actual line of succession stayed totally untouched. William was still going to be king, but his wife was now guarding the private legacy behind that throne. Catherine wrapped up the whole transfer without a single fight. She became sole custodian of Charles's estates, archives, trusts, art, hiring powers, and secret family orders. Now, being a custodian meant managing and protecting that stuff, not owning the throne itself. Camilla kept her house, title, money, security, and personal belongings, but institutionally, zero power left in her hands. Later on, Charles has one last deep talk with Camilla in private. He admitted that stripping her power was literally the hardest call of his entire reign. He never stopped loving her. But he couldn't let his love mess up the future he was sworn to protect. Camilla looked at him and said she'd spent way too long trying to lock down her spot through control, when she should have just trusted the spot she already had in his heart. And get this, Catherine only accepted the job after adding her own written clause to the final paper. She promised to run everything with William's input, Anne's oversight, and total respect for Camilla's dignity. She basically took absolute power and turned it into shared responsibility, proving once and for all that Charles didn't pick someone greedy for power, he picked someone smart enough to be terrified of what power can do. Later, Catherine opens the sealed letter in the archive. Charles wrote that he trusted her because she knew the difference between owning power and protecting what that power is meant to serve. He warned her that the monarchy only survives when personal ambition steps aside for duty. After Charles passed, Catherine walked up to the archive door with William and Anne. She puts the king's key in the lock, stops for a second, and asks them both to walk in with her. That moment said it all. His trust wasn't going to turn into another secret court or a solo power trip. Camilla completely bowed out of household decisions, but stayed around for family memorials and charities tied to Charles. She wasn't publicly humiliated, nor was she quietly sneaked back into power. Her future was clean, dignity, firm boundaries, and no backdoors to control. At the end of the day, Charles's last wish didn't put Catherine above William, and it didn't erase Camilla from his heart. It just ended a dangerous war between fear and duty. Catherine got the responsibility because she never chased it. Camilla lost her authority because insecurity pushed her too far. The firm came out bruised, but solid. And so the final curtain falls, no rival claims, no secret power plays, no unfinished business. Just Charles's final verdict fulfilled. Camilla was the woman he loved. Catherine was the guardian he trusted. And the crown moves forward without a mess.